Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and it is November of 2021. This year is having a slow march to the end, but things are getting slightly better in general, I suppose. We had the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse, which is very good indeed, because that affirms the right to individual defense. Yeah, there's a bunch of psychos complaining about it, but then they're psychos, so who cares what they have to think? And as for the channel, we're about to get out another RPG review, Terminator Resistance, a game that showed up with a little fanfare, but it's absolutely amazing. So amazing that I'm having a hard time finding a game that I want to play as much as that game. Cyberpunk 2077 is not as bad, at least as of the patch that I'm playing now, as some have said, but I just can't really get into that universe all that much. I just don't really care about it. But it's cyberpunkish, so I'm gonna try to play that. But in any event, Terminator Resistance is almost done. It's not gonna be quite as long as the Outer Worlds review, if only because it's not as long of a game as Outer Worlds. I think Terminator Resistance clocks in at, I think, around 8 to 10 hours, whereas Outer Worlds is around 15 to 18. It's not exactly a 20-hour RPG, but it does get up there if you go and do all the side quests, which I do. Overleveling is the best way to play any RPG, because it makes all the enemy encounters 100% trivial. I remember back when I first got into RPGs, trying to beat KOTOR without doing every single bloody side quest. Darth Malak is pretty difficult to defeat if you haven't actually, properly leveled. And the first time I ever played an RPG, I did not know about leveling because I didn't pay attention. Needless to say, it wasn't a pretty final boss fight. I was literally jabbing every single stim into Darth Revan's leg to try to get at least some health. And it worked, kind of. We're going to be finishing up this week the first Encounter Assault Recon live stream. That's turned out pretty good. I've enjoyed playing that game for the upteenth millionth time. After I beat that, I'm going to go ahead and do Shadows of the Empire. And then after that, probably Area 51 or maybe another game. I'm not really sure. There's just so many games I do want to play for the live stream, so we'll figure it out. The review for December is already in progress. Already got some of the script written for Aliens vs. Predator Classic 2000, and already got all the gameplay footage because that was a live stream, so that's coming along pretty well. And then I'm actually changing up the sequence of reviews for 2022. Mainly because when I started replaying Prey 2017, I realized something. Every calendar in that game shows February 23rd. And so, I decided to go ahead and move Prey 2017 to February and move back Fallout New Vegas to January. Which means I gotta hurry up and actually beat Fallout New Vegas, but whatever. Prey 2017, better than I remember. Although the graphics are substantially worse than I remember. Like, there's so much texture pop in, it's not even funny. Let's see. In 2022, I do want to get back to doing book reviews. I just don't have a lot of time because, well, I actually have a social life. Oh my god! So, not as much time, which is precisely why all the reviews are much more complicated than they ever used to be. Also in December, we're going to get the M1 Carbine first shots. Going to get some footage for that this week. M1 Carbine, excellent rifle. One of my favorites of all time. Well worth the price one has to pay to get one of those goody things. It makes sense. There's a limited supply and there's a pretty big demand. I'm going to say something that's probably going to get me some hate mail, but I would say I would rather pay the price I paid for the M1 Carbine versus paying more for an MP5. Yes, M1 Carbine better than MP5. But anyway, let's move on, shall we? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things in life that may not be readily apparent is finding oneself. Because you generally are yourself, unless you have multiple personalities or you get acid thrown in your face like Two-Face, but whatever. Or you're like Batman and dress up as a bat. Oh dear. Speaking of, I was actually able to finally find a really nice bat suit for a very cheap price. So, oh dear. But finding oneself is not an easy prospect. Because when you're growing up, you never really know who you are half the time. It took me up until like age 31 to figure out who I was and figure out what I liked and didn't like and stuff like that. And that's one of the aspects of growing older is you finally realize who you truly are. And as you do that march to understanding yourself, one of the things I would like to recommend, ladies and gentlemen, is figure out who it is you want to be and don't live based upon what other people say you should be. You know, one of the things I see a lot of on the old YouTubes is all these various commentators saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't be like this, don't be like that. They never say, you know, what you can do. They never say what you should do. It's always all this negative crap. You know, it really comes down to like relationships where you're not, don't get married because women are evil. It's like, just this month I celebrated with my grandparents their 60th wedding anniversary, and they still do love each other and like each other, so oh dear. Looks like the MGTOW stuff is not entirely accurate, nor is the wine-spilling harpies, but oh well. It's actually rather funny. When we went out to eat, one of the waiters was actually quite shocked that they were together for 60 years. My grandfather had something cool to say about that, though. He said he found the right one the first time. Not everybody's lucky enough to do that, but the fact is, there are good women out there. And there are good relationships out there. So when you see all this negative crap about you know, relationships and getting married, some of those people are just bitter old bastards. But when it comes to life in general, you know, you look at what media shows about how life is, and a lot of that just isn't accurate in the slightest. You got to remember that media comes from a very small place in Southern California, and so it doesn't really represent real life that much. So when you're trying to figure out who you want to be, you might want to ignore the Family Guys and the movies and the TV shows, as none of that is any way representative of real life. The reason I bring this up is I randomly came across Fight Club. Now, I fundamentally disagree with Fight Club's premise that, you know, real life is all, you know, dull, vacuous, and stuff like that. The people in that film were dull, vacuous cretins. That's really what they were. That's the only way you can really look into it, is they were dull and vacuous. They didn't want to change anything, so they decided to be even worse people than they already were. The fact is, you can shape your life more than society can shape it in many respects. You ultimately have the choice of who you want to be and how you want to live. Society or media, let's say, will try to say that you don't have that you don't have free will, that you don't have any of this stuff, but from my personal experience, that's fundamentally untrue. One of the things that made me most depressed is it definitely seemed like I didn't have any real control for my life. Once I finally realized that I did have control, things changed tremendously. The fact is, the way to live your life is essentially take control of it. Don't let others push you around. Don't let media tell you what to do. Determine what makes you happy and try to pursue it as best you can. Provided it's something healthy and not like getting drunk all the time, but whatever. The fact is, the world is not quite what the media would lead you to believe. And with that in mind, we can move right on to poor old Kyle Rittenhouse. I cannot imagine what that poor kid had to go through. Yes, I watched that trial live, actually, and I was definitely relieved when he didn't get sent to prison, where he would likely have been killed within about the first 5 minutes, and I'm sure Twitter would have been abuzz with happiness. I'm glad to disappoint them. The fact is, if you actually look at the facts of the case, you see that he was completely innocent. But it does bring up a rather interesting concept. Do you, the individual, have a fundamental right to live? Some states would say no, and some states would say yes. The United States is one of those states where you, the individual citizen, have a right to your own existence. You have a right to live. Meaning if someone tries to attack you and try to kill you or create grievous bodily harm, you do have a right to defend yourself. Self-defense law is something that is sadly controversial and has been controversial my entire life. None of the idiotic crap coming out of the media now is anything new. They've been talking about that stuff since before I was even born. So, with that in mind, why would you not have a right to defend yourself? Now, the prosecutor in this Kyle Rittenhouse case said that you don't have a right to defend yourself, that everybody takes a beating now and again. Now, keep in mind, if you look at the statistics, which no one cares about, more people get beaten to death than get shot to death. Now, that's a great little thing to know about, but hey, that's the way it goes. So, if that's the case, if by looking at all this data and looking at the video that Kyle Rittenhouse was clearly defending himself, why do people push false narratives? Human psychology, ladies and gentlemen, is a fickle mistress, but it exists. There are people who are more loyal to the concept of party or ideology than they are to their fellow man. If you believe in a certain ideology, you will defend that beyond what is sane. So if you believe that Kyle Rittenhouse is bad just because he falls on the other side of the political spectrum, then no matter what he did right, he did wrong. No matter if, with all the evidence that if he didn't do what he did, he would be dead, it doesn't matter. He is the bad guy. We've seen the United States president say that he was terrible for doing what he did. We've seen multiple governors do this, which really they should not be doing. It doesn't make a lot of sense for a U.S. president to wade in on what is effectively a local case in local jurisdiction. The fact is, though, ideology compels these people to do this because they have to defend that ideology. That's just the nature of human civilization. It's one of the trade-offs. Sadly, human civilization is a very good thing. If you don't think it is, I would highly recommend checking out the Society for Creative Anachronism and see just how much you like living in pioneer times. And believe me, without civilization, pioneer times wouldn't exist, and pioneer times to non-civilization peoples, as in hunter and gatherers, would basically be heaven on earth compared to being a hunter-gatherer. So yeah, just think about that. Civilization is good. It allows us to have this electronic means of communication. No civilization means you're trying to bash somebody's head in with a rock in order to get the sweet brain juice within. Guess which one I'd rather have. But the fact is, that's what you get. You've got some psychopaths that are going to say, you can't do this, all in the name of whatever ideology they believe in. For me, I personally don't really have a political ideology, as I can see both political parties for what they are. And both political parties want to gain power so that the people that run for office will have the power that they spend money on and things of that nature, and their donors will get kickbacks and stuff like that. To be loyal to a political ideology, I think is a bit silly. It's sort of like being loyal to Hasbro, of which people are. People will defend Hasbro day and night, despite the fact they're a toy company. But that's human civilization. People need something to believe in, essentially. With religion starting to be on the decline, people are finding other things to believe in, and sadly, many people choose government. And when you consider the sheer power government wields, it makes sense. It's like, well, they must be right. They've got the experts, without realizing that the experts might have political bias, political motivation, might be paid, and all the rest of that. People will believe in Hasbro, believe in toys, because, well, it's something that's beyond themselves. It's a sad set of circumstances, but that's what it is. Ideology is one of the worst aspects of the human condition. It's where you reduce them, they, the other, to a status where whatever they do is wrong and whatever you do is right. But it's just not going away. If people argue or literally send death threats over toys, what chance do you think self-defense has? If I was more popular, I'd likely be getting a lot of hate and death threats just from what I said now, and I didn't even endorse a particular ideology. It's just, you look at what people would do over religion in the past, and what they did for politics in the present, it's much the same concept. People will defend what they believe in. People will get angry at the other for daring to disparage what they believe in. Not like us has done more damage to the human race than anything else. And the not like us can be anything from religion to clothing to you're from the wrong side of a river, all kinds of stuff. It's just the way it's going to be. And what you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is you don't want to become like that which you hate. You see all the anti-SJWs up on YouTube, and they have kind of become the thing they hate. They do pretty much the same thing as the SJW. I always recommend just keep yourself educated, know what's going on, and leave it at that. Don't live your life constantly worrying about what the SJW said about this or what the SJW said about that. The other thing on that subject is media. Star Wars, Aliens vs. Predator. Star Wars is dead. It's gone. Okay, it's dead. There's no more Star Wars now. It's just gone. Yeah, Mando might be good. Yeah, Book of Boba Fett. But the real Star Wars that I grew up with ended in 2014. I don't care. Yeah, I like to make the average salty comment now and again, but I mainly do that for fun. It's just media. It doesn't matter. The old books are still there. The old games are still there. Don't get yourself bent out of shape over a fictional universe. And if you don't like it, well, write your own fanfic. Write how you wanted it to end. Because it's just an idea. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It's the same way with video games. It is really funny to see the sheer amount of bitch fests on forums. I almost said political forums, which I kind of avoid like the plaque. But science fiction forums are kind of the worst in many respects for just the bitch fests. Where I remember not too long ago, because getting into Terminator for the, getting back kind of into Terminator for the Terminator Resistance review, just looked up, what can a T-800 do to a Necron warrior? And it basically devolved into just these two people bitching each other out over the stats of a Necron. A fictional entity for a tabletop wargame. But there you go. If people can't just have a basic debate over whether one fictional character could defeat another, what chance do you have with something like self-defense? Come on, people. But that's just kind of how that goes. You know, don't get bent out of shape over stupid media. It's bad. You know, X-Men 97 is going to ruin the X-Men animated series. Or is it? X-Men animated series is still going to be there, so who cares? You know? I think the worst aspect of all these wokeified franchises is it just kind of gives these franchises a bad name, kind of gives you a bad taste in your mouth. But that only happens if you let it. If you just ignore the bullshit and enjoy the good stuff, you can be happy. It's just one of those things. Humans just need something more than themselves. Most of the time. If you truly can find yourself and be happy with who you are, what you have, and what you believe in, you could actually, potentially, be happier. Because, once again, bitch fests on all sorts of things. Guns, bullets, even primers get bitch fests. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Just ignore it. It's like, okay, you buy the bullet you want, you buy the gun you want, and be happy with it. Find yourself, and you can find your happiness. It's a long journey, but as we say around these parts, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a fairly short... How long has it been going? No, it hasn't. Well, when I just start waxing on philosophical, time certainly goes by. So, actually, wait, before we go, Thanksgiving, ladies and gentlemen. This is another thing. This is actually kind of funny. This whole subject just ties itself together now that I start thinking about it. Thanksgiving. Okay, so my family and myself are going to be doing a slightly different Thanksgiving. Instead of a turkey, which there's a poll apparently where turkeys are like the most unpleasant aspect of Thanksgiving. So we decided not to do turkey. We decided to do grilled beef ribs. Oh, I'd like to be eating some right now. But anyway, gonna have the beef ribs, sweet potato fries, wild rice, pumpkin pie, which is actually pretty good, and pecan pie. Although pumpkin pie evidently is also rated pretty highly as like the worst aspects of Thanksgiving. So there's that. But you know, we're gonna have that. And people still disagreed. Oh, it's just a family dinner and not real Thanksgiving. It's like, what? You're gonna defend what? You're defending the turkey? Really? But that's the thing. It's like you can't go against this tradition because some ungodly reason, you know. It's just too hilarious. But that's the nature of humanity. People will defend what they see as bigger than themselves and something they draw identity from. Draw identity from yourself. Find who you are and don't draw identity from something else. One more thing I'm going to rant about. Skin color. That is not an identity. It's not. It's just what your skin is colored. It's just one of those things that, like, you would think by 2021 people would be smarter. But then again, humans are still human. I don't go in for the whole, we're designed to be hunter-gatherers or whatever. I don't really go in for that. But what I do go in for is there's no impetus to change. You know, so much media is trying to get you to adapt to it instead of trying to find what makes you happy. But skin color does not denote identity. Characteristics are not character. You know, it's just what you are, not who you are. Who you are matters more than skin color, you know. It's just, it's really stupid. But that's just the nature of it. People want to draw, identity from a shared skin color when in all reality that doesn't mean much. Kyle Rittenhouse, for example, they tried to say he was a white supremacist, even though the people he shot were also Caucasian. But technically, on his birth certificate, it's listed as Latino, whatever that means. So, what? It's one of those things. The thing is, ladies and gentlemen, find who you are. Appreciate who you are. Be who you are. Don't simply be what someone else or some media group wants you to be. When you find yourself, you may in fact find happiness. And so, I'm General Otts, and I'm gonna wish you good. Actually, no, I'm not exiting yet either, because I got caught up in my philosophical rant this time. Here we go. I have not found that many good books to read. Finding a good book, not an easy prospect. I've just been reading some random crap recently that's not even remotely Alpha Prime. But there are 2 comics I want to recommend. Both Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles... No, both Power Rangers related. Power Rangers meets the Ninja Turtles, and Power Rangers meets the Justice League. Both have really good art, and both have some nice, simple, entertaining stories. Nothing too complicated, nothing political. It's just Power Rangers either A, beating up on, I think, Brainiac, and Power Rangers beating up on Shredder. I really like Power Rangers meets Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because that's kind of a crossover made in heaven, except what we ended up getting was something made in hell. There was a Power Rangers and TMNT TV show. Actually, no, it was a Saban TMNT TV show called The Next Mutation that had a chick turtle for all the reptilian furry equivalents. It was god-awful. If you want to see a review of that, I ain't gonna do it, because that means I'd have to watch it. Check out Phaelus. He has a review of every single episode. It is terrible. It is horrible. And there was a Power Rangers crossover with Power Rangers in Space, which was actually one of my favorite Power Rangers shows because, well, it was in space. It was like Star Trek, only as cheesy as people think it is. But, yeah, Power Rangers meets the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You actually have a giant turtle robot, and you have what is basically the Turtle Megazord. It was pretty cool. It's a really good comic. Highly recommend hunting both of those up. That's the only really good Alpha Prime stuff I've read recently. It's just trying to find a good book. So hard these days. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I am General Otts, wishing you good beef ribs, and wishing you good Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles meets Power Rangers, whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.